Started in just a minute, and these are really fun chats that we're hosting here at Newtopia Now, our ambassador talks, which highlight some of the most exciting, inspiring voices in the CPG industry. So I'm really delighted to introduce our speaker, Sherry Frey, who is the VP of Total Wellness at NielsenIQ, has more than 2 decades experience in CPG and consumer insights, and is a lovely person that I learn from every time I hear speak. So I'm just excited to take in this presentation. And Sherry, welcome to the stage. Thank you so much for being here, and thanks everyone for joining us.
Thank you, Jessica. I have to admit that I need to change my bio, and it's actually 3 decades, not 2, but I've been a little reticent to do that. Thanks everyone for coming today. This is a 15-minute talk, and I have a lot of content that I want to share with you. So instead of cutting slides, I'm just going to talk quicker. But we want to talk with you about what's happening in wellness and kind of what are some of the emerging areas that we think are important. And even though we're on the glow stage, we're going to give you this perspective, this broader perspective of what's happening with wellness and how it's all tying together. And quite frankly, some things we think are very important for you to be taking away and thinking about with your business. So I think one of the most important elements is just the pure fact that, wellness has taken a back seat over the last couple years because of inflation, because of the economy, but it is back. In about Q3 of 2023, we actually saw Better For rebounding, and it is now again outpacing what we were seeing in terms of the conventional space. Better for meaning better for society, better for health, better for the planet. This is really fantastic news for the industry and everyone that's weathered that. I am most often asked about what is going on from a generational standpoint, what does the future look like? And so I wanted to really set the stage for you of what it looks like today and what it looks like for the future as you're thinking about your business and future casting. So the number one thing I always tell people is, when you look at where the spend is today, please, 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 we as an industry always get excited about the younger generation, the younger generation, the younger generation. Please look at that 34% in yellow that is boomers today. They still represent a huge portion of the CPG spend. Now, when you look at the next graph, they're not driving a lot of the growth, right? A lot of the growth, though, I really want to call your attention to is there in the blue is millennials. So again, it's not necessarily Gen Z, which we put a lot of attention on, but it is millennials. Why this is important and why it's just important to think about generations as you're thinking about your business is really what's going to happen in the next 5 years. We have been partnering with World Data Lab to do projections, and there's some really important pieces here. One, you can kind of see that I'm a Gen Xer, and we're not quite peaked yet in the next 5 years, but we are going to peak in the next 10. Boomers are peaking and going down. The most fascinating thing that we find is those millennials. They're in green. Look at the growth of a millennial. So over the next 5, 10, 15, 20 years, the importance of them. But of course, if you think about this, in the next 5 years, the oldest millennials are going to be 50. And so it's really not necessarily about generations as much as it is about life stages that consumers are in. The other piece, there's 2 pieces here I think that are really important when you think about projections as well. Because of our lower birth rates and just because of the size of the generations, look at the millennials versus that kind of fluorescent green line. That's your Gen Zers. And then that blue line, that light blue line at the bottom is alphas. They are not going to reach the size in terms of sales of millennials until after 2050. So again, when you're thinking about where's the opportunity and where's the prize, we do think it is in that millennial group. So we knew you wanted to know, what are they buying? What's important to them? And so we have been looking. You can always ask consumers what's important, but when we really look at what they're buying, we think that's where the critical piece is. And we have looked at, a couple things I think are important. One, we know that older consumers care about things around health. They care about things around joints, skin, cognitive health, right? This is a group that we see really strong supplementation purchasing, especially around cognitive health. They also, you hear a lot of things around older people don't care about sustainability. We actually find that's not true. They do care about things like packaging, they care about the environment. So again, not what they say, this is truly what they're buying today. I am a Gen Xer, and we looked at the data, and there is nothing that Gen Xers indexed high for. We are totally unremarkable for all my Gen Xers that are in the room. Nothing really around health and wellness or sustainability that indexed high. But now let me take you over to those Gen Y or millennials. Now, if you think about them, right, that's a pretty broad group. In the next 5 years, we've got folks that are going to be in their 50s. But these are consumers that they are, if we call it, they're in it, right? They've got babies in the household. They've got kids in the household. They are in their career. And if you look at what they buy, these are the consumers that are so passionate about the food that they are putting in their bodies. They index the highest around things that are better for. They're the highest organic shoppers. They look a lot like these Gen Zers, but just a little less. The Gen Zers are fascinating. If you look, again, this is not what they say, it's what they're already buying today. They care. So when you think about your products, animal welfare, humane, cruelty-free, they are putting their money where their mouth is today in terms of purchases, social responsibility, clean label. They are driving many, many, many of the trends around clean label, so artificial colors, flavors, ingredients, phthalates, sulfates, etc. And probably the piece that we at NIQ are watching the closest, and we're a little, we've got some hypotheses. I have to tell you, we don't totally know the answer, is that they are indexing already today so high on health and need states, digestive health, brain health, eye health. So they're buying it today, and for us that says, are they savvier? Are they smarter? Are they more educated? Are there just more products, digestive health sorts of products, eye health sorts of products? Are they looking at the boomers and the Gen Xers and thinking, I don't want to be like that? So there's a lot of different hypotheses we have. The other one is, quite frankly, is this a generation that is actually seeing the effects of poor eating and poor diet, and we actually are seeing that they are having to buy these sorts of products? So there's some hypotheses behind this. Now, when you look at this, we also do check Gen Alpha. Gen Alpha is, the Gen Zers are the youngest here on the page. They're 12 to 27. Gen Alpha, we actually just track households that have teens or tweens in the household. Really, when you look at Gen Alpha, what they're spending their money on is beauty products, right? And in particular, what we found really fascinating, they're spending a lot of money on skin care. More money on skin care than even cosmetics. And it's fascinating when you think about the health kind of priorities of these Gen Zers, and you think about these alphas who are coming. And again, right, they're living at home, so it's not like their money that they're spending, it's their parents. But the fact that they already today care so much about skin care, moisturizers, toners, etc., we think that kind of says a lot for some of these trends that you're seeing emerging around collagen banking. And by the way, banking just in general, there's so many fascinating trends around how Gen Z is one of the highest prepared for the future in terms of saving money, looking at their FICO scores. And now they're even banking collagen, right? The trend around that from a wellness perspective. So again, a very futuristic element we think is fascinating. Another one, and this is not new, but we think this is a very important topic to be thinking about in terms of the nuances around this, is women's health. And again, I think women's health is one of those areas where you can see the importance of looking at this from a life stage perspective. We've been tracking this from an NIQ standpoint. This is how we are looking at it. Here's the deal. I think we all know this is going to be a big topic. It is a big topic as we have a woman running for president, as we have reproductive rights that are on the ballot, and the conversation more at the forefront. And what we're really finding fascinating is that there are very specific nuances, of course, very specific nuances around female needs, but specific female needs at certain life stages. And so we are seeing so much growth in specific needs are really around menopause. Some of the searches that we're seeing is around hair loss, right? Crepey skin, mature skin. So again, thinking about the aging consumer, and really, quite frankly, thinking about the fact of that slide that I showed you with millennials, it is so critical to learn how to market to women over 50, because that is continuing to be where the area of opportunity is. I will say the other piece that we found really fascinating on women's health is that we are really talking about very specific things. It's very authentic. That's the expectation that we have, that women have from brands is to talk about things. I was on a panel at Expo West, and it was funny because someone said, can we say the V word? And I'm like, not only can we say the V word, right, but the reality is that we are talking about all sorts of body parts, and women expect the brands to talk to them very, very authentically. I mentioned life stages. So if you're a brand in the audience, this is one of those areas, again, where I would say, don't get too caught up in the generational piece, but think about what triggers someone to change their behavior. So we track when people change behavior. We look at, did they get a new job? Did they move in with someone? It's very fascinating. I wanted to kind of give you 3 different perspectives. So we noticed that people really up their organic produce consumption when they move in with someone, when they have actually their second baby, when they send a toddler to school, to daycare, and when they go through menopause. So what's really fascinating, if you think about that, 2 of those are kind of health related, and 2 of those are social, right? This is who we are. We eat organic produce, or I'm sending my child to daycare, and it's kind of a social interaction. The better for, we see a huge spike in people's better for consumption. Again, having a baby, sending a child to daycare, and also when they're trying to lose weight. Now, clean beauty, we actually find that people really spike and ramp up their clean beauty purchasing when they start a new job, and also, again, when they have their first baby. So it becomes that element of having someone, again, holding someone, touching their skin, etc. Transparency is so, so key. We have seen a huge jump just in the last couple years in terms of expectations from consumers around transparency. The number one thing that they are asking for is we want ingredient information, and they are savvier, as we know, savvier than ever. And one of the things that we have really been looking at is there's a trust issue right now in our consumer packaged goods space. There's trust as it relates to our food products. If you think about things like the food additive laws, right? It started out as the Skittles law in California, but it kind of popped up in other states. Well, what it did is it's introduced this conversation for consumers where they're saying, wait a minute, why can't, there's no red dye, red dye is not allowed in my beauty products, but it's allowed in my food. Wait a minute, what are these additives in our food? We've seen an increase in food recalls, and then in the same side on personal care, right? The tampon challenges, there's a trust issue from a consumer standpoint. They're expecting more from brands. And what's happened is, I think the food additive one is a really fascinating one where it doesn't even matter if these laws go into place in these states because the conversation is already out there, and social media has already created this dynamic specifically around, I think the number one is that red dye number 3, where there's just consumer concern. Pesticides in food is another one as well. Now, we track an NIQ. We're tracking the sales data, what goes through the channel and who the consumers are and where they are. We also track when a consumer goes to any retailer's website, what they're typing in. And I'm really fascinated by this. When you look at facial skincare, the fact that they're typing in words like niacinamides, snail slime, which by the way, I am a huge fan of snail slime, vitamin C, retinol, this savviness that consumers have, and this is one thing it can be frustrating for brands, they are less likely to be typing in brands, right? They're less likely to be typing in brands. They're even less to be searching for product benefits. That's still important. But the fact we've seen such a growth in their searches for very specific ingredients is A, we know an impact of social media, but B, a real reality that consumers are savvier than they ever have been before and understanding ingredients and what the purposes are. I wanted to share with you, and Jessica and I were talking about, what do we think are the important trends to talk about? I wanted to share with you one that we think is really critical, and I think that we've seen that the mental health is a topic that's been destigmatized over the last couple years, thankfully due to the pandemic, and it's a broad topic. It means everything from truly diagnosable mental health challenges to how people are thinking about their cognitive function, how they're thinking about their stress and their work-life balance. So it's pretty broad. But we have seen that this has become increasingly important to consumers, and our happiness in the country has gone down. We have some new research, we haven't released it yet, but it's coming out in the next couple weeks. We see the anxiety levels of consumers specifically tied to the election this year has increased. We are seeing more and more products where everything you can see from pet food to foot care, where we're seeing claims around stress and mood. So we're trying to kind of help and serve consumers from that regard. You're also seeing products. We think it's interesting where more and more brands are leaning into ASMR, right? So even like putting that toilet pod in your toilet and hearing and smelling the sensation, right? Like ASMR reaction, as well as you're seeing brands like Happy who are actually putting a QR code on every product around awareness around mental health, right? So creating connections to consumers. I say this because this is the dynamic that we're in. So on the previous slide, I'm telling you, they care more about ingredients and they're worried about trust and all of these. And at the same time, as you think about who they are and how you market to them, it means you've got to do it in a way that doesn't stress them out and overwhelm them and gives them this confidence in this time that there's just a lot of consumer challenge. My last second and my last slide that I just wanted to share with you, and I think is a really important one as well, is when you think about the wellness shopper, we continue to see this blurring of people that are passionate about wellness and putting it all together. I've mentioned a couple times that better for, so that's the biggest segment. People that are buying better for foods that are in their body, or eating foods that are for their health or wellness or sustainability or social responsibility. We were a little intrigued. These are heavy buyers. There's not as much overlap on those heavy buyers across all three groups. But if you are a brand and you are in the or in the beauty section here, or if you're in the food section, make sure you take time to walk the aisles and think about how do we do a better job to cross-pollinate for these consumers, whether it is people that are putting the food in their bodies, buying the proactive supplements, or thinking about the clean beauty overall. So with that, I know I went over, sorry. But thanks everybody for coming. These slides will be available. If you want, you can just drop your card and we'll make sure you get a copy of the slides.